Another incredibly important type is the floating point numbers. So this is a little bit different from our integer in that a floating point number can have a fractional component. Basically, we can have a number with a decimal. And we see here that we can have both signed and unsigned numbers with decimals. So we see here in our example, we have negative 5.29, and we are storing this in the constant named floating point number. So as you're coding iOS out, we've seen an example where we've used this keyword double, and double represents a 64-bit floating point number, whereas a float represents a 32-bit floating point number. So we call them floating point numbers, but really what we're going to be referring to is this double 99.9% of the time. This is an idea very similar to the integer, where it is possible to specify these sizes and you do things with those specified sizes, but almost all of the time we're just going to use the double, and that's going to give us a little bit more flexibility in terms of the size of the number we can hold. Obviously, a 64-bit can hold quite a bit more information than the 32-bit can, and it's just going to be the consistent item that we're going to use in the Swift programming language. Often the float would come into play when you're mixing a legacy code in, you're using some floats from Objective-C or a specific API. Often with Apple, they'll tell you for some specific reason, they want you to use a float, and they have a good reason for that. But almost all the time when we're writing our Swift code, we're going to be able to use doubles, and you just need to remember that a double is a number with a decimal. Now, the final thing you might ask me is, what happens if I have 12, but I want to make it a double? What does that look like? Well, that just is 12.0, right? So it technically has that decimal saved or ready to be used, but you can still have that whole number. We just add that 0.0, and this makes it a double. So you're going to see some cases where you do get the whole number back, but you want to interact with other doubles, and you're going to want to keep your types the same. We'll cover this together. But in those cases, yes, you could do like 12.0, 24.0. If you have that 0.0, it is a double.